This is Sam. Sam lives in a fast-paced city and has to go through hours of traffic to work and back every day. At the end of the month, when he has to pay his utility bills and taxes, Sam always dreads the stress of going after each biller to make payment. That was then. Sam is a much happier man now because he uses the First Bills Pay FirstBank biller aggregation platform. He simply logs on to www.firstbillspay.com and enjoys a single easy-to-use payment point for all his utility bills, taxes, funds transfer within FirstBank or to other banks. The biller aggregation platform allows you purchase airtime and data, pay school fees, cable TV subscription, and much more. To experience unique banking services and payment solutions like Sam, simply log on to www.firstbillspay.com. You will be prompted to create your own account, and once you complete registration formalities, you are on your way to enjoy an innovative, stress-free, and seamless payment solution known as First Bills Pay. Let's make life much easier for you. Log on to www.firstbillspay.com to get direct access to billers, vendors, and service providers. The biller aggregation platform is designed for you. Sign up today and experience more than you're begging for. You first. FirstBank.
This is the FirstBank FinTech Summit 4.0, and we'll be talking about how AI and blockchain is changing the landscape of financial services in Nigeria and around the globe. I would like to start first by introducing our executive management team, starting from the MD CEO of FirstBank Nigeria Limited, Dr. Adeshola Adetoton, and the Deputy Managing Director, Mr. Francis Shobo, and our Group Executive for Technology and Services, Callistus Obeta, and Shuma Ezirim, the Group Executive for E-Business and Retail Products. Also, we have interesting panelists and our guest speakers who are all participants and active players in the fintech industry. I'll start with our guest speaker, Chinedu. Chinedu is from Love and Magic, and he will be talking to us about the theme of the summit. Chinedu went to King's College, and he also went to Harvard Business School, and has been a key player in the fintech industry, and is particularly passionate about what blockchain can do for the financial services landscape. We also have with us Mr. Musa Jimo from CBN. He's the Executive Director for Payments, and he'll also be joining the plenary discussion later in the program. We also have with us Mr. Amin Umeda. He's with the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System NIBS, and he'll also be joining the plenary with us today. We also have with us Farah Jitubo. Farah is the co-founder for Okra, and Okra is a payment platform systems in Nigeria. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we will start with our keynotes. We'll start with the MD CEO with the opening remark. Thank you.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me, on behalf of the Board of Directors and the leadership team of our great institution, FirstBank, Nigeria's premier banking group and the leading financial inclusion services provider, welcome all of you to the fourth edition of our FinTech Summit. There's no doubt that the FinTech industry is currently the fastest growing sector within the Nigerian economy, which is run by a sizable number of young entrepreneurs. Since the inception of our FirstBank Digital Innovation Laboratory, FirstBank has established relationships with companies like PiggyVest, Terragon, VoguePay, and Paystack within the sector. And these has positioned FirstBank as the partner of choice to many fintech players. At FirstBank, we provide an array of digital financial services with the use of our various payment channels to reach carefully segmented audience with tailor-made financial solutions. Some of these channels, which have become the toast of our customers and industry, include the First mobile app, our well-acknowledged *894# USSD platform, and of course, our First Money, with the popular First Money agency banking network that is at the forefront of the national financial inclusion revolution. Our bank, FirstBank, has become the foremost financial inclusion solution provider with over 9 million USSD active users, processing over 200 million transactions to date. Also, with more than 60,000 First Money agency bank locations, we have to date processed over 320 million customer transactions, worth over 6 trillion naira on the First Money agent network as at the end of July. This has further cemented our position as a clear leader in the agency banking space. You may recall that our First mobile app was awarded the best mobile banking app in Nigeria in 2019 by the UK-based Global Business Outlook. I'm excited that we have recently released the revamped version of the same First mobile app that include new features such as inflow and outflow dashboard, beneficiary management, and profile personalization. We have equally deployed new capabilities such as insurance payment, pay your electricity bills with the *894# on our USSD platform. I will wish to assume that you are all aware of the famous FirstBank Digital Innovation Laboratory, where we strive to create new digital experiences, enhancing existing channels and products, as well as leverage the FinTech and non-FinTech ecosystem for co-innovation. The sudden emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic era has provided a ready canvas for stretching our FinTech readiness and exploit. And I'm happy to note that once again, FirstBank has been demonstrating outstanding preparedness in this all-important space. Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic has, in our view, become a catalyst for the accelerated innovation that we greatly desire. The business world and the workplace have changed dramatically. However, at FirstBank, we have seen the COVID-19 era from a positive lens, a period of new opportunities. Therefore, the era calls for a more deliberate approach in reviewing and identifying new opportunities. Incidentally, FinTech is at the heart of the pivot of the new opportunities. And that is why we have, for this edition of the FinTech Summit, elected to concentrate on how blockchain and artificial intelligence will disrupt the sector in Nigeria. I, and I'm a host of other participants, look forward to the usual in-depth examination of this subject. FirstBank, Nigeria's premier bank, will continue to provide first-class customer service, business advisory and financial support to grow its customer businesses and expand the vistas of innovations in its products and services to boost customer experience and grow national economy. I trust that you find this session very useful for advancing the essential works in the FinTech world. And once again, I wholeheartedly welcome you to this 4th edition of our FinTech Summit, tagged FinTech Summit 4.0. Thank you, and do enjoy your stay with us.
Thank you so much to the Chief Executive Officer of FirstBank Nigeria Limited, Dr. Adeshola Adedisan. Thank you so much for that keynote address. And for folks, for the 12,000 people that have signed up for this incredible FinTech 4.0 Summit brought to you by FirstBank. As the CEO has just mentioned, FirstBank does have electronic channels through which, since we are in a COVID-19 era, we can reduce your having to visit a number of FirstBank branches where, of course, you have to exercise social distancing. So you can see that the through the app and also the star 894 USSD, you've got electronic options, since we're talking about technology here, that can keep you transacting with your FirstBank account and keep you safely at home. So again, FirstBank wants to remind everyone to wash your hands, wear your mask in public, and also practice social distancing. Thank you so much, Dr. the CEO. Thank you so much for your opening remarks there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the technical glitch there. I think the blockchain and AI gods weren't happy with me saying that they're set for disruption. So I was probably disrupted to start things off. And our keynote speaker is having a bit of a laugh there. He's the next person that I'm going to be introducing. What can we our keynote speaker, Chinedu Echerio. He is an innovator, a person that believes that you can solve every single problem if you put your mind to it. He put up HubSpot. If you're Nigerian, you know who Chinedu Echerio is. HubSpot was a navigation app that he actually he created that's supposed to assist people in being navigate their way through metropolitan areas. It was purchased by Apple. I mean, that's pretty much all you got to say about how innovative this man is. He is also a successful serial entrepreneur. He is also the co-founder of Love and Magic Company, a platform he created that he believes in to allow people to be able to express ideas in solving the problems of the world. And I cannot wait to hear his keynote address, which is how blockchain and artificial intelligence will disrupt FinTech in Nigeria. Now, remember, for the 12,000 people that have signed up, that are watching this address right now, you can actually ask questions. I'm seeing the Q&A box right there. Be sure to type in your questions with your name, where you're from, what part of the world you're from. We will get to your questions. We'll have a 10-minute Q&A session once our keynote speaker, Chinedu Echerio, is concluded. Chinedu, over to you. We're waiting to hear what you have to say. Please, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you and good morning. Thank you for that wonderful and amusing introduction. And thank you, FirstBank, for inviting me to give this talk. I was mentioning to my 7-year-old twin boys that I was going to be giving this talk, and I told them the bank was FirstBank, and like, are they the first banks in Nigeria? I'm like, yeah, they are. So FirstBank has continued a long line of being first, and it's wonderful that this is the first summit of its kind. And I hope all of you on the call today are safe and are in good spirit. And I look forward to the Q&A at the end of my talk. I have a presentation that I'll quickly share to walk you through my thoughts. One second. Okay, so the title of the talk is How Blockchain and Artificial Intelligence Will Disrupt FinTech in Nigeria. But before I begin my talk, I just wanted to give you a sense of the perspective that has led to the viewpoints I have. And the first part of my career started off in finance, in accounting, at JP Morgan Investment Banking, and also at a hedge fund. And what that's given me is a perspective of the economy from the lens of finance, from the prism of accounting and capital flows and capital markets. As was mentioned, I founded a company called HubSpot, which was eventually sold by Apple. But a company that's not on this page, and I think it's worth mentioning, was a company called FirstBank. And that was a company my brother and another classmate of mine from business school decided to build right after graduating from business school. And it was called FirstBank because we were trying to play on NASDAQ. So this idea of having a global or an African-based platform where people could trade financial asset was something that's it's always been on the mind as a possibility. And then when Apple purchased HubSpot, I spent my time focusing, okay, well, how do entrepreneurs go through this journey? How do innovative teams go from having an idea to having something that's actually working in the marketplace, that's actually truly been innovative? And that's essentially what we do in the Love and Magic company. We help organizations and the entrepreneurs bring their ideas to life, to pierce through that complexity of, okay, how do I go from I have an idea to something that's actually working? And so it's through those lens that I think my comments are grounded. Okay, so this is Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, and he says this. It says, we stand on the brink of a technological revolution, the transformation which will be unlike anything humankind has experienced before. So I don't know Schwab personally, but this is a man that sits at the center of many conversations, of many rooms. So I think it's worth paying attention to some of the observations and patterns he's seeing. So what could this pending or upcoming revolution be? So for those of you who are students of history, you're familiar with the Industrial Revolution, how the scientific process and that emerged mostly in Europe about the Renaissance really created this change of capacities for us to build systems and products that were no longer available, that were previously not available. That continued obviously into the 19th and 20th century with mass productions and design of those other human systems. But I think the reason why we're here today, I think the reason why this is such an important point for us to convene and create a discussion around is that the third industrial revolution that started off with connecting human beings with internet and social and business and social media networks has now morphed into a much more complex, much more powerful, and much more potentially disruptive evolution or revolution, which is the integration, not only creating a network of human beings, but now creating a network of devices, of algorithmic agents. And that new possibility is what the fourth industrial revolution holds for us. A scale of complexity that the world has never seen, but also a scale of potential cooperation and coordination that could harness a whole new generation of business models, whole new generation of wealth creation. With disruption comes opportunities, and what I want to do today is tell you that disruption is coming, but also share with you, I think, a few ways you can deal with those innovations if you're an incumbent in Nigeria. Okay, so Silicon Valley is coming. This is a statement made by Jamie Dimon, the CEO of the largest bank in Nigeria. So it's not just me saying this. The smartest people in the world are saying this. And it's not just saying, it's actually, people are actually doing. So this is the army. This is the army. These are the forces. These are the entrepreneurs. These are the innovators who are raised capital to use these very technologies of blockchain and artificial intelligence to create more value for your customers, to disrupt existing business models. And it's not just saying, it's actually doing. So if you look at the actual investments they've made, almost half of the venture capital investments made globally is going into FinTech. These are smart people who are making smart bets. And not only that, that number is expected to grow at a 25% clip over the next few years. So FinTech will be disrupted. These technologies will come to bear globally and in Nigeria. And if you think it's just a global challenge, remember that that the investments are across a whole variety of sectors, and many of these sectors cut across global boundaries. Okay, and if that's not enough to worry you or make this something that you put a lot of thought into, that those venture capitalists and those startups are also focused very clearly on Africa, Nigeria in particular as well. So this is our army in Africa of startups who plan on using these technologies to create new value for customers, to disrupt existing existing incumbents. Okay, but before we go into how this disruption will happen, I think it's worth spending time to truly understand what these technologies are. Sometimes in the buzzword factory of hash rates and cryptography and decentralization, it's sometimes hard as business people to really get at the core of these technologies. How will these technologies affect my bank? How will these technologies affect my insurance business? How will this technology affect me as a small business owner or as a large corporation? So the next few slides are probably different than the way that these technologies have been explained to you in the past. But I think hopefully this way of thinking about what AI and blockchain is will allow you to pierce through the noise that many of you, the partners and technology partners and your innovation teams are at words and ways they're describing these technologies. Okay, so the key point here, it's all about patterns. Patterns. Okay. So now, if you weren't familiar with the English the workings of human beings, you will look at these as scribbles. So our very number system are a bunch of patterns, but those patterns convey meaning to us as human beings, right? So the ability to have numbers allows us to describe patterns, and this was a revolution. Prior to the invention of the Hindu-Arabic number system, most of the world used the Roman numerals. I don't know how many of you can multiply 75 and 35 using Roman numerals. I can't, but I can easily do that with Arabic numbers. So this was innovation on a wonderful scale. And the fact that once we understood numbers and we could see the patterns in numbers, it allowed us to see the world in a much more beautiful way, in a much more scientific way. And that was really the birth of the scientific process. That's what led to the Renaissance period, our ability for us to observe numbers and see patterns. And the most popular patterns, for example, is a Fibonacci sequence, for example, that describes not only interesting patterns in numbers, but also interesting patterns in nature. So, so the golden ratio, for example, shows up in the number of petals in a flower. It shows up in many aspects of the world. So essentially, what AI is and what human intelligence is the ability to observe patterns in space. So look at a flower, you'll see a pattern. So what AI is the ability to see patterns much more deeply than a regular human can with their own regular eyes. So not only is there patterns in space, there are also patterns in time. So if you throw a coin and you count the number of times it lands to heads, a pattern will emerge. And this pattern, again, is the types of patterns that AI systems rely on to be able to predict the future, predict what will happen next. So that is the best way, in my mind, to describe to you what artificial intelligence is in a very practical, practical way when it relates to fintech. It allows you to predict what something is, and it also allows you to predict what will happen in the future using statistics and patterns. Okay, so this knowledge of patterns was taken on by Luca Pacioli, who was a monk and mathematician. And what he did was codify these patterns in a book called the Summa. And one of his collaborators was Leonardo da Vinci. And as you can see from the Last Supper, there's symmetry in the works. So not only do we see patterns in nature, but there are also patterns in what we call beauty. So this idea of patterns is a very important point that I hope you leave with. There's patterns all around you, and what artificial intelligence does lets you discover those patterns. Okay, so the book that Luca Pacioli put together was 2,000 pages long. But within this wonderful document, this wonderful document was 27 pages. 27 pages that changed the course of banking, that changed the course of the financial service industry. And within those 27 pages, he introduced the notion of double entry accounting. So he, Luca Pacioli, was an apprentice and many of these Venetian merchants. And with his experience working with these merchants, he categorized and wrote down in an accessible document how to account for business, how to account for the debits and credits to make sure you can organize your business for success. So what his contribution to business is rarely talked about, but I think it's time for us to celebrate this document. Okay, 500 years later, another thinker, innovator created another document, and this was a white paper in 2008 written by Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who he is. It may be a Nigerian, it may be a Russian, it may be a group of people. But what he basically shared with the world was a system, a way to finally solve the double spend problem in information networks and allow people to send money electronically, to send money with the same level of ease, the same level of security that you could an email. The addition of this decentralized approach towards network, plus creating economic incentives for those algorithms, for those miners to preserve the network is really the heart of what we call the blockchain. So one simple way of thinking about what the blockchain is from a business perspective, think of it as triple entry accounting. So not only did the numbers put on the debits and credits for the different accounts, but they also put when it comes with an independent distributed system of ledgers that says, yes, this is an accurate transaction. So that is probably the simplest way of describing the evolution from patterns to the double entry, and then finally to this triple entry or this shared ledger. Okay, so the advancements in those blockchain technologies, the encryption and smart contracts, plus the birth of data sets that were previously unavailable, data sets around our behavior, data sets of how we engage in social media, plus the step function in the effectiveness of some of these algorithms, neural networks, convolutional networks, etc., plus the increase in computational power is what's at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. It is this epic opportunity of coordination at a scale that human beings have never seen before. Devices, human beings, robots, artificial intelligence agents, all connected, all combining, all figuring out how to create more value. That's the world we're entering in. That's really what the fourth industrial revolution is about. Okay, so that's the history of AI. That's some way to think of it from a business perspective. But what about it from a real economy perspective? How do these technologies actually show up in the lives of regular people in Nigeria, in the lives of business people all over the world? So one way to think about what these technologies can do for us as a collective, as a group of people who want to increase prosperity in the world, abundance in our societies, in our communities, in our families. What are the implications? I love this quote by Bettina Warburg. She says, humans find ways to lower uncertainty with one another so we can create together, create value, do business together, do projects together. So if we can design ways for us to collaborate by reducing the uncertainty, it can open up a whole new era of coordination. So uncertainty is economic drag, and uncertainty is the friction of creation, is the friction of doing business. So our jobs, I think, as business people, and also on the policy side, is to make sure, how do we reduce the cost, the uncertainty, the friction of us doing transactions, to doing business together. So okay, so in the worlds of finance, for those of you who are in the world of most of you are, I think, in FinTech, you can think of uncertainty as spreads or differences between the yields or between two assets. So I put this page together to really show how uncertainty percolates into the real economy. So, so one way of looking at uncertainty and the actual true cost from a business perspective is to see yields on debt. So if you were the US government, the uncertainty people would have about your ability to pay them back is pretty low. They would only charge you almost half, just about half a percentage point. If you're Nigeria, the uncertainty about whether Nigeria will pay back investors is roughly around 8% in terms of the cost of that uncertainty. If you're a business in Nigeria, the lending rate is around 15%. So that's a measure of the uncertainty of that transaction with the business. And unfortunately, if you're a consumer and you're on the lower end of that risk uncertainty curve, the true cost of being able to do business with your banking or mortgage partners is significant. So on every measure, it makes sense for us as business people to design ways for us to shade and collapse much of that risk premium embedded in these numbers. But from a larger policy perspective, it's important that we think about how can these technologies truly reduce the uncertainty of doing business in Nigeria. If we can crack this puzzle, it can bring more to our collective abundance than virtually any other policy or any other economic activity that Nigeria can do today. It is quite possible, theoretically, that if blockchain were properly implemented in Nigeria, that this is obviously mathematically, that the uncertainty of transactions in Nigeria would be lower than the US government. So, okay, so let's go back. Okay, so the Nigerian economy is a $400 billion economy, roughly, but that economy in its aggregate is made up of markets, right? So the economy is made up of a market for oil, a market for corn, a market for sugar. But those transactions themselves, those markets themselves are made up of transactions. So in many ways, the transactions are where to look to really get to the atomic level of uncertainty in the country. So this page is really all you need to know from a business perspective to truly see where blockchain, to truly see where artificial intelligence will disrupt your business, or if you are an innovator or you're a startup, this is where you can bring blockchain and AI to bear. This page is all you need to do to craft your plan to defend your position or craft your plan to enter a new market. Okay, so the first thing is communication. So for a transaction to happen, there has to be communication between the parties. And that is the wonderful gift that the birth of the mobile industry in Nigeria has created. It's created this ability for Nigerians to communicate with each other and also for Nigerians to communicate with the external world. So let's take Hassan and Tolu, for example. Imagine Hassan connects with Tolu and they talk about buying rice in 30 days time. So this is where blockchain and AI can, this is the best way to think about how it can disrupt your business. So essentially there are three questions that these two technologies can answer for you. The first one is, what is going to happen? So in 30 days time, the interest rates could be a certain level and influencing Tolu's ability to, Hassan's ability to pay for the goods. The weather and other patterns could determine whether the rice is truly available in Nigeria or in that marketplace. So again, artificial intelligence can help you predict that. Artificial intelligence can also help you tell you what something is. So is this the high quality rice that you should buy? So you can use visual image processing, for example, to tell you what something is. It can also tell you the quality of an asset by looking at observing the structure of the payments, etc. So those are two ways blockchain and artificial intelligence can help you predict what will happen, what something is, and what will happen in the future. But one thing that computers haven't yet had the ability to do is to stop 419, is to stop people breaking the rules, or stop people cheating, stop people from not doing the thing that they said they were going to do. That aspect of transactional risk is a huge driver and that risk premium in Nigeria. So what you can do as a business person, as an innovator, is to understand, well, how can I use blockchain on artificial intelligence to collapse many of those risks, many of those uncertainties? If you look at your business through this lens, you'll start seeing where you can actually innovate and where you can go into new markets or defend your existing business. Okay, so let's try to make it more practical. So to be very clear, these are the natures of the businesses that will be disrupted over time in Nigeria. So if you are in a business where you only use human intelligence to predict what will happen, you will be disrupted. If you only use human intelligence to know what something is, whether the quality of a loan portfolio or the quality of a security, for example, you will be disrupted. If you are a middleman, when I say a middleman, all you're doing is really being an informational middleman, you will be disrupted. So those are the broad categories of industries that these technologies will disrupt. Okay, so I personally don't like using the word disrupt, because in many ways it's a powerful word, but it doesn't really tell us what the thing is, right? What is it that we know we don't want to be disruptive, but what do we want, right? I think that's I think I like looking at it from that positive way, right? So if you were to think of it that way, what is it that your customers want? So here are three ways to think about customer value, especially in fintech, that can help you focus your innovation efforts. So for each of those transactions that your customers do, they essentially want three things to happen, or one of three primary things to happen. The first thing they want to do, they want to increase the speed at which something happens, the speed at which these transactions happen. Some of these payments can happen to over 3, 4, up to 7 days. So what can you do as a business leader, or what can you do as an innovator, as a new fintech startup, to speed up the rate of these transactions? The other way to think about innovation is what part of that process can uncertainty and risk be taken out. So going back to the rice example, before the rice gets to the marketplace, right, Hassan has to put it on a truck, go from the truck to the marketplace, maybe the distributors, the wholesalers. There's a whole network of physical things that have to happen for those products to reach the marketplace. You can use blockchain, you can use AI, you can look at those areas. Okay, how can I use these technologies to reduce the risk? And the last way to add value to customers is how can I minimize the price or the resources associated with that transaction? So those are, that's one way to frame your innovation in a very practical way, and have your teams and your innovation and your startup teams and your innovation teams focus on those transactions and on these three planes. Okay, so now what are the actual opportunities that you can go for in Nigeria or in fintech in general? Remember, the wonderful thing about fintech is that it's mostly a digital space, and if it's a digital industry, it would eventually be like sending an email. Things will keep on getting easier and better. So the entire financial service industry will be disrupted. The entire industry will be disrupted. But here are very specific areas that you can look for if you're an innovator within a bank or an existing incumbent, or if you're a startup looking to create more value for customers in Nigeria. So under financial services, there are marketplaces, clearing and settlement, reconciliation, regulatory reporting, know your customer regulations. Those are wonderful opportunities to use these technologies to improve the customer experience. On the capital market side, letters of credit, corporate bond, collateralized loans. Those are all businesses and lines of business that AI and blockchain are designed to improve. And obviously the payments, remittances, not only within Nigeria, but also international and cross-border payments. But the list can go on. You can literally pick any part of the financial service industry, and blockchain and AI has an opportunity to create 10x the value proposition for your customers. Okay, so now that's the view from the innovator's perspective, the view from the startup and the fintech startups perspective. But what if you are an incumbent? So the opportunities for incumbents, I think, are primarily three. The first one is large companies or existing companies have an asset that small companies don't. They have relationships. They have relationships with existing customers. And that data of those relationships over time is literally the equivalent of gold. So my advice is to use artificial intelligence to mine the data you have about your customers to understand how you can better serve them. The fintech company that's going after your business doesn't have that information. So for your ability to use that data and deliver a more personalized experience for your customers is key to defending the brand and defending the market share you already have. The second piece of advice is, with the advent of blockchain and AI, there now is an opportunity to deliver financial services at a scale and also to people who were previously, it was uneconomical for you to reach. So use those same blockchain and artificial intelligence technologies to go after new markets. Don't play defensive. Go into new growth markets that you previously didn't think that was part of your business model. And the third advice for incumbents is to improve the culture of innovation. I can share, if I had to think of the root advice for the way to respond to this upcoming disruption in fintech for incumbents, is really this point, that the reason why this space is so available to fintech companies, the reason why so much capital is being deployed, because there's a bet that large incumbent companies will not move fast enough to innovate, to respond to these challenges. So the culture of innovation, the culture, the processes, the way, the attitude towards creativity, to experimentation is fundamental to your ability to respond effectively to this upcoming threat by the fintech companies. So that's what I want to spend some time talking about, the strategy you can have in the midst of this upcoming onslaught. So for those of you who are students of strategy, of business strategy, you're probably very familiar with the works of Michael Porter, a Harvard Business School professor. But his work decades ago really created the intellectual framework for really thinking about strategy as a question of differentiation around a customer, and then orienting your service stack in a way that optimizes for your core strategy. But the truth is that this is no longer, or is not as relevant as it used to be. There is no such thing as a market anymore. Apple is competing with Google. Google is competing with Ford. Ford is competing with data companies. All those traditional notions of fintech or in any particular industry is no longer there. So we need to move away from this idea of industry to remember that it's a free-for-all now. It's all about the customer. It's all about a company's ability to deliver real value for customers. So after giving this a great deal of thought, here are 3 ways to think about innovation from a high level, from the business, from the CEO level, from the C-suite level, from the board level. If you think about the innovation through these lens for your company or even for your startup, I think it will help you really engineer the culture of innovation that's needed to respond. The first one, again, going back to patterns, is that you have to inculcate the processes and the capacity to perceive patterns. If you remember, I shared that there are patterns in nature, but there are patterns in observation. So before you can act on something, you have to perceive it, right? Before you can take action, you have to know it's there. So what processes do you have as a company to make sure you can perceive your surroundings, so you can perceive opportunities? Think about it. What processes, how often do you meet, discuss these opportunities? So that's the first one. So once you perceive the opportunity, you now have to understand it. So if, for example, you find that 30% of your customers account for 80% of your profitability, that is a very important pattern. But that pattern doesn't tell you why those customers are valuable. So the great thing about human intelligence is that you can take a pattern and then infer about why that pattern exists. You could say, oh, these are customers that need that are SMEs, and they need these banking services more than others. And since they need these banking services, the profitability of those services are much higher than your general customer base. Again, you have to understand patterns to understand it. Then once you understand the patterns, the next thing you need to organize yourself into a pattern. So organizational agility is key to your success. To go from here's an opportunity in FinTech, or here's an opportunity with this customer, and then actually create teams that will go execute on it is key. So the fact that you have structure, the fact that you have management processes is good, but when it comes to innovation, those processes may very much hinder your ability to succeed and organize into the pattern for success. Okay, so how do you become more innovative? The punchline is the key to innovation is to deal with ecosystems. The advice I've given so far are really the advice from a single entity perspective. But it is clear to me that the future of strategy, the future of being able to respond to competitive threats in your business starts from your ability to create active and vibrant ecosystems. So ecosystem is the way to deal with the incoming disruption. Okay, so let's take the example of Libra. Libra, for those of you who don't know, is a blockchain initiative sponsored by Facebook. And their goal, and I think for those of you in the payment space particular, their goal is to make sending money as simple as sending a WhatsApp message or sending a message on Facebook or an email, right? And obviously, Facebook has billions of people, and they want to make that possibility a real thing for all their members. So imagine being somebody in China being able to send a payment to someone in Lagos with the same efficiency of them sending a WhatsApp message. That is the vision, and that is a possibility that Libra and Facebook are contemplating to the extent that they become live, to the extent that they launch in Africa. This will disrupt many fintech companies. It will disrupt many companies focused on the commoditized payment space. Okay, as I mentioned, innovation is not something you do alone, or I wouldn't recommend you do it alone. You cannot innovate fast enough to compete with what's going on. There's no number of innovation and hackathons and labs that you can have in your company that would ever help you manage the complexity and the new entrance into a marketplace. So the goal is figure out who your partners are and creates in a collaborative way an ecosystem that drives value for all the members of that ecosystem. So the Libra ecosystem is one practical way of thinking about that. Okay. So here is a chart and a page I put together to help you think about, okay, now how would I put together an ecosystem for my own company, of my own industry, of my own consortium? So here's one practical way to think about it. Remember that all strategy starts off first with the customer. Sometimes when we talk about disrupt, it makes us, it pushes our attention away from the true source of value. The true source of value is to design a process that affects a customer in a positive way. So the customer is the beginning of business strategy. Once you have the strategy of the customer in mind, what is important to your customer? What is the metrics? What are the metrics of value for the customer? It could be the price. It could be speed of the transaction. It could be the uncertainty about whether that cross-payment transaction will go through. Either way, you need to define what those metrics are. and then identify capacities you have within your company, and then find capacities you can share out that other people can bring into your ecosystem. And that's what I've tried to represent here, is that all strategy comes with an alignment of an ecosystem towards the metric that that particular customer segment or your particular customer cares about. That is a summary of Michael Porter's work, but also combine it with network theory and obviously the value that can accrue to networks in this networked economy. Okay, so quickly, on the regulatory end, this is just a few thoughts on the regulatory end. So if uncertainty is a friction to economic activity for us to trade and do business together, then the ability for us to have regulatory certainty is the bedrock of that uncertainty or that risk stack. So I think efforts are already in place, but I think having regulatory clarity will do much for the industry. And I think there's already been a lot of work done with global standards. So I think there's a lot of work that the Nigerian regulators can leverage to create a more cohesive and coherent policy around these technologies. And lastly, I think there's an opportunity to create regulatory sandboxes so that innovators and startups can play around with these technologies in a way that, first of all, allows the regulators to better understand these technologies, but also can unearth ways to drive real value for the economy. Okay, so we've talked AI, blockchain, fintech, disruptions, but at the end of the day, let's remember that what we're really doing, our success will come from our ability to impact the lives of regular people who have people they love, who have ambitions in their lives, who have things they aspire to. And I think it's a wonderful way to end this presentation. Thank you.
Fantastic stuff there. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Chinedu Echero, serial successful entrepreneur, co-founder of the Love and Magic company, through how blockchain and artificial will disrupt fintech in Nigeria. Chinedu, I mean, you said so many key things. One of the key things I picked up on this, the key to innovation is to deal with ecosystems. You also spoke about the need to activate vibrant ecosystems as that being necessary to getting innovation. And you also talked about the uncertainty being a drag on the economy, and if Nigeria can get a blockchain to an effective, efficient level in the country, that can reduce the amount of uncertainty in the economy and also get things going. We got questions for you. Now it's time for the, thank you so much, Chinedu. Great presentation.
Thank you. That was a wonderful summary.
You can see I'm taking notes as we advise all of our participants, over 12,000 of them, to also ask a number of questions. The first questions I'm seeing here, Chinedu, is on safety. So let's begin. We've got 10 minutes to get through this Q&A session. Hope all of our, I'm sure, looking at the reactions here from all of our participants, they really enjoyed it. So let me throw these questions to you with regards to safety. And the thing is, one is on safety on blockchain, the other is on safety on AI. So in our Q&A box, Chinedu, from Oscar Ekwogwa, he says, to what extent can you estimate the level of safety that AI has on fintech? And then or maybe I should let you answer that, but on the blockchain side, Fabine Amusan, he says, what are the security issues with blockchain technology and how can it be prevented?
Okay, so the first question on artificial intelligence, I'm not sure what he means by safety in fintech. So the way when I usually think about AI safety, I really think about the much more complex forms of artificial intelligence that have higher intelligence and could pose a threat to human beings. I think that's a real threat. But there's nothing that I've seen that makes me worry about the safety from a financial perspective regarding AI. in particular, at least at this time. Then on
Okay.
the blockchain side,
Yes.
so there's never been a more secure information network than the blockchain. So it was brilliant in its in the conceptualization of blockchains, but it was also done with a level of practicality that has so far been unhackable. Obviously, there are a few other issues around 51% control of the nodes and some of these other high-level game mechanics. But there's no other network that in the world that has been as secure as the blockchain, at least the public blockchain network.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay, and there's another question here for you. This is coming from the fact there's so many of them, but Osunlana Johnson, he or she said, can you be, or rather, Ukashatu Lawan is saying about the positive effect of blockchain for SMEs. I mean, you're in that space. You're an SME. You've had startups. How can blockchain be effective positively for SMEs?
Yeah, so it's wonderful to just remember that page I shared on the transaction. So if you want to understand how it just go through that process. So let's take if you're an SME. So right now, let's take some of what your transactions are. So you're probably, if you're importing products, you're probably using a letter of credit of some kind, right? So I think blockchain, letter of credit space is one of those concepts that I think are one of those areas that blockchain will disrupt as well. So that's one way to use blockchain. You can use blockchain to help you manage your assets as you have flows of maybe products going all over Nigeria, knowing where they are, not just being told, but being sure that they are where they are is another practical use. Again, so the best way to really think of it is break your transactions down. Just really break down all the steps, and then see where can you make it faster, where you can make it less risky, or where you can reduce the price of those transactions. Then you'll find that you'll have many ideas of how you can bring those technologies to bear.
Great, and I said 10 minutes, it's actually 15. Chinedu has 15 minutes for QA. Abiodun Shitu has this question. Looking at a scenario here, does the blockchain and AI will require an update of customers' biometric data going forward? Yeah, it's a little.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But remember, it's all about patterns, right? So the more data your system has, the more it can predict the patterns, right? So the more data you have about your customers, the more you can predict how you can help them better. So think about Google, for example. Why is Google so good, right? The reason why it's so good because of the amount of data it has. It has patterns of human behavior from billions of people, and it's stitching together those patterns to be able to predict what you want, what you're looking for, what image to show you. So the best way to think of AI is really think of it as pattern recognition in space and pattern recognition in time. Again, I know I'm doing it on a very high level because what I want to do is make it easy for you to think about it. So one way, so if you have data right now about your customers' behavior, right, you can use AI to help you discern all kinds of things about who are your best customers, who would want you to reach out to them tomorrow to offer them a loan, who is most likely to want to use your new mobile app that you launched, what message would most likely allow you to allow your customers to use your product. Those are wonderful uses of AI and the ability to predict.
Great stuff, Chinedu. I have another question here from Otasowi Osifo. He said, given, and you just talked about patterns and mathematics, and identifying these patterns. Given that competencies is an important factor in using technology, how will we deal with the issue of acquiring the right competence to drive the moves into new and advanced tech in Nigeria?
Wonderful question. As someone who went to, as you mentioned, King's College, and who ended up majoring in finance and accounting, I never studied this formally. But what I want to share with those of you on the call is that this is a wonderful age, right? When I started with Hopstop, I didn't know anything about technology. I used Excel because that's, as a finance guy, as an accountant, that's all I had. So the world is open. There's no visa required, right? You can stay in Nigeria and build the unicorn fintech company that will disrupt Silicon Valley today, right? Those possibilities are, and most people think of education as something that you go to, you sign up for an online class or register for a school. But what I'm here to tell you is that all the information that I've acquired over these past years have been on public forums between Google, between YouTube. So there's never been a better time to investigate these options. You don't need to go to school. You don't need to have a particular degree in it. There are online courses you can take that can get you up to speed very quickly. And so for those of you who have kids, or for those of you who are looking at interesting opportunities down the road, I would highly recommend looking at data science, because the world is moving over to the understanding of data. Because if you can understand data, you can understand patterns. If you can understand patterns, you can understand what something is and what will happen tomorrow. Those are huge superpowers for anyone in business or in life in general. And you don't need to have a degree. You don't need to have any special degree to make this a reality. You can today, after this session, go to many online platforms and learn how these technologies work. I mean, it'll take time, but what we need to remember is that we're now in a learning environment. Everyone's a learner. There's no such thing as standing still. You have to keep on learning. You have to increasing your skills, your understanding, so you can progress on all the aspects of the endeavors you choose.
Fantastic. All right, great answer. So that's very encouraging for people out there who are worried that this might be too advanced for them to get into. So thank you for, it means a lot coming from you and what you've achieved to encourage people and let them know that this is something that can be learned. So continuous education is key. Thank you for that, Chinedu. Two more questions for you. Chooks Albert here says, Chinedu, please, what's your take regarding views about Bitcoin not being backed by anything and shouldn't be taken seriously because it's a bubble? And Chinedu, you mentioned Satoshi Nakamoto and the paper that he released, or she, or whoever Satoshi is, back in 2008. So if you could take a swing at what Chooks has asked there with regard to Bitcoin.
Okay, yeah. So this is a point that's always been that's always brought up. But I think let's remember that all we're really doing is storing value, right? And for you to store value, you have to have trust and you have to have belief. So it's really a question of, there's a certain group of people in the world who believe that that central banks and existing economic systems aren't trustworthy for whatever reason, and they've made certain choices because of that, and they believe that a cryptographic trust is the way to go. And so it's really a question of people's sense of belief and what people's sense of trust and what they believe would hold value. And the compelling, or the argument that blockchain enthusiasts have is that there's never been a way to secure scarcity, and I think the blockchain, at least the public blockchain, has been the only way to secure the fact that you can reproduce any particular information or material, which is something I think is unique. What happens down the road, I don't know, but I'm not particularly interested in Bitcoin itself. I'm more interested in how blockchain can truly transform Nigeria in enabling the collapse of that risk premium that's prevalent all over Nigeria.
Excellent. I am glad you made that statement, Chinedu. Thank you for the answer as far as what blockchain can do, because a final question here from Chris Ojo, I think this encapsulates everything. Chris says, thank you so much for the presentation, Chinedu. I would like to know the present issues surrounding the adoption of blockchain in Nigeria, as far as the fintech industry is concerned.
So I think there's some regulatory uncertainty at some point. I think generally in terms of I think that's obviously a huge driver of just not that the government is or regulators are holding it back, but I think having better clarity, I think would help. And I think it's the ability for us to work as an ecosystem. Again, I use Libra as an example. So between the fintech companies, the incumbent players, and the regulatory bodies, a more smoother connection of really solving problems for each of those companies would only benefit the entire ecosystem and benefit Nigerians in a very real way.
Optimistic way to complete the Q&A. Thank you all for your questions. Questions are still rolling in, but we got to move on. Thank you so much again to our keynote speaker, Mr. Chinedu Cheruo, serial entrepreneur, highly successful, a very informative presentation there. And thank you so much for answering those questions with the depth that you provided. We really appreciate that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will now be moving on to our next speaker, who of course is Mr. Chuma Ezirim, Group Executive E-Business and Retail Products of FirstBank of Nigeria. He is going to be taking us through how current trends in AI, artificial intelligence, are impacting digital product development in FirstBank. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so I've been asked to share with us, how FirstBank is leveraging AI, to drive digital innovation. As you all are aware, we are a 126-year-old commercial bank with over 18 million customer accounts. The good thing about our customer base is that over 50% of them bank only with us, which is something that we are very proud of. We have over 65,000 customer service points spread across Nigeria and 6 other markets in Africa. Over 75% of our customer base, or about 14 million, bank with us through our digital channels, and 10.6 million active cards. At peak, FirstBank processes over 90 customer-initiated successful transactions per second, only on our digital channels. So we therefore see ourselves, and that's what our CEO reminds us every time, that we are a technology company offering financial services. That's how we see ourselves. But I'm also a bit careful, we are not a FinTech, so that people won't say we are competing with them. Based on the high volume of data that we manage as a bank and its age, the bank took very strategic decision a few years back to clean our data, some of which are several decades old, implement an enterprise data governance policy and structure, re-architect our systems, and to manage our data sets, and most importantly, attract the right skills within and outside Nigeria, to manage all these structures. Today, on AI, develop and enhance our customer offerings and engagements, and also optimize our processes. We believe that big data and AI will put upward of over 40% of the revenue of a retail bank in this part of the world, and also reduce about 30% of its OPEX. We have, deployed AI, an AI-powered fraud and monitoring system that detects out-of-pattern transactions done daily by our customers and thereby prevent fraud. As I said earlier, we process over 90 transactions per second. So you can imagine the volume of transactions that we process on a daily basis. And some of them are fraudulent. So we just have to, so it's not possible for human beings to manage, to monitor those functions. And also to ensure that we track anti-money laundering, KYC, and other regulatory compliance standards. We have launched our digital lending products powered by AI. We built credit scoring algorithms and leveraging big data analytics and machine learning to assess and take credit decisions on our customers' loan requests in less than 90 seconds. So today, if you go to our app, you will see a product, in the menu, called First Advance. Our First Advance product is targeted at our salary account customers. While recently we developed another model which is targeting the unserved and underserved segments of our customers, and they constitute both individuals and businesses. We're also leveraging the data being generated on our agency banking portal to extend loans to our customers, or to our agents. So who are able to their agent app to request for loans, which our machine learning algorithm processes, and the approved amount is disbursed in less than 2 minutes without any human intervention. In partnership with one of the search engine firms, we've also developed personalized marketing messages targeted at different customer profiles. And this talks about the personalization aspect of AI. So today, as a FirstBank customer, you just don't receive any kind of message. Would have known your profile, would have known who you are, would have known your likes, okay, based on the data we will have about you, before we send you some messages that we do send to you. In the next couple of weeks, we will be launching a bot to assist our customers analyze their banking transactions, make financial decisions, and also manage their finances. It will be an omnichannel, self-driven experience with the consent, and that is important, with the consent of the customer. And just to point at this stage, that for everything we are doing, for every service we are offering to the customer, we always seek, we always seek the customer's consent, before that service is offered. Lastly, we are automating our back office and transaction processes using robotics. As Chinedu pointed out, the use cases are so many. There are so many things we are planning to roll out in the next couple of weeks and the next couple of months, and even by next year. So we are more than willing, to partner with interested organizations and persons, to develop and implement them. As you're aware, we have a digital lab, digital innovation lab. So our, FinTech engagement folks in the lab will be more than willing, to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chuma Ezirim, Group Executive, E-Business and Retail Products, First Bank of Nigeria, for taking us through how current trends in AI are impacting digital product development in First Bank. You quoted our CEO who said that First Bank is a technology company that offers financial services, but you're careful to also say that, of course, it should not be confused with First Bank being a fintech company. Talked about the digital trend, 75% of customers transacting on First Bank's digital channels. The AI that First Bank has incorporated credit decisions in 90 seconds or less, using the first advanced product on the First Bank app. Fantastic stats. First Bank really is pushing the way forward with regards to how to integrate AI into your services to your customers. Thank you so much, Mr. Chuma Ezirim. Appreciate your time. Up next is going to be, we're going to hear from Mr. Aminu Maida. He is the Executive Director, Technology and Services at the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, PSC, NIPS, and he is going to be taking us through the industry infrastructure to support new developments in the financial services industry. Mr. Maida, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And it's a great opportunity to be here with my fellow panelists on this forum. I think first of all, Chinedu, thank you for a brilliant keynote speech, and I think I'm just going to build on top of that. I was hoping my regulator would speak before I went because I have to toe the line in terms of what I say. But I'll be very careful in terms of going wild and ambitious with my thoughts and ideas. But as they say sometimes, those in the innovative space have probably heard this saying, the law often, technology often leads regulation. And the law tends to lag behind regulation, but really it is not an indictment, it's more a saying that all the innovators, and especially in our space, the fintechs, they need to be able to reach out to the regulators and show them what is new. I mean, as regulators, I see myself as a quasi-arm of the regulator. We need to be aware of the new developments in technology. And I think it's a natural thing about human beings. What you don't know, you're skeptical about, and your first reaction is to be defensive. So just building up, giving another dimension to something Chinedu mentioned about the fourth industrial revolution being here. I think it's also important to note that that fourth industrial revolution, there's an important aspect of it. That's the human behavior. And you could almost say that that's in its own, it's a revolution, a 4.2 revolution in the consumer behavior as well. You would agree with me that we have moved away from people being happy, let's say from a banking perspective, or I have a bank account and I'm just glad that I have somewhere that I can store my money safely. To the point now that people are demanding for frictionless payments. They want outcomes. They just want to enable an activity, and they don't even want to know that a payment has been made. I mean, you look at apps like Uber and other lifestyle apps. You link it to your payment with your payment details, and you just take an Uber ride. You jump in, jump out, and you're not really even aware about the payment aspect. So I think it's very important to also know that where we are today is in a world whereby the consumer is actually the one leading the way, telling you what he wants. And the onus is on us as service providers and enablers, which NIBs are, and regulators, to make sure that we don't get in their way. We're there for them when they need us, and we move out of the way as soon as we enable them to achieve that outcome. So coming back for us at NIBS was created just under 30 years ago. Our main purpose is we're a shared infrastructure for the financial industry. And by shared infrastructure, where our mandate is to reduce cost enable innovation. And when I say enable innovation, when the industry needs to come together either to adopt a technology which might be, expensive for one player to adopt and roll out. We at NIBS are there to kind of almost be a center point for that ecosystem approach, which Chinedu is mentioning. Now, I'll touch a bit on how, in particular, artificial intelligence is relevant to us at NIBS. Now, as Chuma has mentioned, he touched on the area of fraud. Today, or traditionally, fraud systems have really just been about set a rule, has this account transacted more than X number of times in the past X number of minutes, or have we seen a pattern whereby a transaction was made just before midnight for a small amount, checking to see if the account was not dormant, and all of a sudden, 1 minute after midnight, you see a large amount trying to clean out the person's transaction limit for the day. So I think for us at NIBS, this is one area where we really see AI playing a key role, and we're actually in the process on a journey towards making that happen. We're moving away from that world of static fraud analysis, whereby we have analysts continuously training machine learning models, or just using their common sense to kind of spot the whole human intelligence scenario that Chinodi mentioned. Saying, okay, I've actually seen this pattern. Let me go and quickly update my fraud rules engine. So actually putting in place systems and platforms which will actually be more of, I'd say, dynamic, as in working within the dynamic environment. Because you have to agree with me, when it comes to fraud and security, it's a cat and mouse game. You block one avenue, another one comes. You think you've conquered them, they get smarter. So really, the only way to keep up with it, because all of us have a finite cognitive ability, is to leverage artificial intelligence, and in particular, to leverage dynamic machine learning. So machine learning that can go into the environment and adapt. Of course, taking a bit of guidance from human beings as well, but something that has the ability to adapt on the fly. Now, what is this going to do for us as an industry? Like I said, we are an enabler guided by our regulator. But really, coming back to the point I made about the reality of today's consumer is that they really want everything now, and they want to achieve their experience. And to be honest, more and more, they are not even cared about things like the payment side of it. I'll give you an example. My 3-year-old daughter today, when she sees the Amazon symbol, she's already Alexa. She's already beginning to learn to converse with Alexa. In fact, I've had to go and tighten up some of the settings to avoid her accidentally making purchases by herself. But this is the reality of where I think the next generation is heading towards. And for us in the financial industry, especially as an infrastructure and as banks as well, we need to enable that reality to come true. Because if we don't, they're going to find a way to do it. So we need to be collaborative, and we need to ensure we make what they want in the spirit of the consumer 4.0, who just wants that certain outcome, as opposed to being told what to do. So for us as NIBS, like I said, we're going to be adopting AI in those areas, such as fraud and security, mainly to enable our customers, who are the banks, to have more confidence in our platform, to also be enable them to react faster with confidence. So in the near future, even when we get our systems right, we're going to be moving to a scenario where, in line with transactions, we're hoping that we would be able to even give a sort of like a risk score within the transaction to say, okay, based on our systems and what we are seeing, it's a risk score of say 40%. It's a suspicious transaction, as opposed to today whereby we're given that information in semi-real time. But what it ends up doing is that it slows down that outcome for the consumer. And whether you like it or not, people are impatient. That 15-minute SLA or whatever SLA we have to say, okay, we'll look at the forward analysis report and either unblock or block the transaction. For somebody, that might make him so irritated and feel inconvenienced that it might push him to an alternative payment channel. Because like it or not today, people do transact in currencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum and the likes, which is largely unregulated. But they are doing that whether for malicious intent, or some people are doing that for genuine reasons, because the current way of doing things, they're finding a bit of friction in it. So I'd land by saying again that for us NIBS, as we are an implementation arm of the regulator, but really we are also need to be realistic and truthful to ourselves that technology is ahead of the regulation, but we also need to be open enough and let the innovators come and talk to us and show us what we're doing, educate us in a way so that we can enable them achieve what they need to achieve. And you mentioned the sandboxes, Chinedu, and I'm sure when Musa speaks, he'll tell you that there's a lot of progress towards that from the perspective of a regulatory sandbox. And for us in NIBS as well, we're also working on an API sandbox to also enable faster innovation for our customers as well. So thank you very much. I think I've used up my allotted 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aminu Maida, Executive Director, Technology and Services at the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System. Really appreciate some of the notable points that you made there, that NIBS is an enabler, part of the regulatory arm, and the customer is the one leading the way. I like how you put that. The customer is the one leading the way, and it's important for, for innovators, even regulators, to stay out of the way, allow the customer to guide things. Also, like the example you gave with your 3-year-old daughter and the Amazon logo and Alexa, of course, using that to segue into the fact that things are moving forward, technology is moving ahead of regulators, and it's important to keep up as much as possible. And also, I really like the points you made on how fraud and security is a cat and mouse game. You shut down one area of fraud, another one pops up. So you said it's very important to leverage on artificial intelligence and also dynamic machine learning in order to be able to temper down on fraud. So thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate your insights. And the API sandbox that NIBS is building, that is also very impressive. Thank you so much for sharing that that information with us. So we appreciate you again, Mr. Aminu, Executive Director at NIBS. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, and also we're getting a lot of questions. We might have to send some of the answers via email, but we still have a Q&A at the end of this. Keep sending your questions in the Q&A box. We're seeing a lot of them. In fact, some of the questions already preempted the speakers before they even speak. But next up, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Kalistos Obeta, Group Executive, Technology and Services at FirstBank Nigeria Limited. He is going to be speaking about the technology implications of AI and blockchain to banking services and the impact on technology and customer experience. Mr. Kalistos Obeta, the floor is yours. Please take it away, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I will be riding on the back of the comments by the MD, as well as the keynote speaker, Mr. Chero, and then Maida and Chuma. Now, for FirstBank, when you process 90 transactions per second, 20 million to 30 million per day, at the rate of growth that is doubling every 18 months, you have to rethink your technology architecture. And this is precisely what we did. We knew we are building a transaction processing institution. we knew that we needed to redo the enterprise architecture for high availability, for robustness. So, and we approach this in 5 key areas. There's the architecture, there's the data, there's the security, and we also needed to look at the way we build and deliver to market. But at the back of all of that is also on the people capabilities. And I do remember that HRO also spoke to that. Indeed, the best platform that you can build for any organization is the people platform. Because if you build the people will build the technologies. Now, fundamentally, when you look at AI and blockchain, the core to that is really about compute power. And this is really an area where you have to rethink about your technology infrastructure. And on the data strategy, that's also extremely very fundamental. And I know that Chuma did speak to that. FirstBank is taking a strategic focus on data. And this is based on our realization that the effectiveness of data strategy and AI investment is determined first and foremost by data quality available on the platform. And this, if you really want to take it a step further, it is beyond the structured data within the bank that come by way of account opening and transaction processing, but also taking it further to the unstructured data within the social media and other publicly available data sources. Now, the use cases for data has been discussed, product recommendation, credit decisioning, customer interaction management. These are all the areas that Chuma has spoken to, as well as HRO and MIDA. But for where we also see a major use case for AI is really in the area of banking operations, middle office, settlements, processing, reconciliation, account opening. And indeed, if you are handling about a third of the industry payments, then you have to rethink about how do you process your settlements and reconciliation and dispute management. Absolutely can only be done through technology. And in pursuit of that strategy, data has to become mainstream. And the role of a chief data officer is very core to delivering that. And for FirstBank, we now have a full-fledged CDO function that is driving this strategy. Another core area where we had to rethink about technology, given the pace and our ambition, is on the delivery model. Clearly, if you have to respond to market at the pace at which the market is evolving, you have to build faster. You have to build and test faster. So we have embraced the agile way of working. That's the DevOps from traditional method. And yes, while insights from data is great, but it's execution. It's in executing the strategy that you really realize the benefits. And therefore, despite the fact that FirstBank has been around for over 126 years, the reality is that in performance, we act as a startup, i.e., leveraging prototypes, engaging with customers, and responding to change in an iterative mode. And to be able to do that, you need a technology platform that can make that happen. I think in terms of experience, this has been discussed extensively, but at FirstBank, we are leveraging AI to play different roles, delivering different capabilities. We use AI as a digital worker. This is where we use AIs to process, to automate back office processes. We also use AI for transaction processing like chatbot banking, but also as a digital thinker. And this is in the area of customer service, predicting customer churns, product recommendations. But what I would like to mention is that in the area of blockchain, what is critical here is really around the speed it delivers and the additional trust and transparency and the potential to bring down transaction processing costs. But the unique thing about blockchain is not a journey that any institution can go alone. It's an ecosystem also facilitated by regulators. And this is really where we are obviously open to business. We're open to FinTech. We're open to other banks, and we're working very closely with NIPS and regulators to really drive this. FirstBank is a leading financial institution in Nigeria, and we're always at the forefront of these innovations. So, great place to be in, and we are playing that lead role in the industry in Nigeria, and we are confident that this is a new vista that has come, and we will make full advantage of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Callistus Obeta, Group Executive, Technology and Services at FirstBank of Nigeria, talking to us about the technology implications of AI and blockchain to banking services and the impact on technology and customer service. Very notable points that you made about the necessity for technology when it comes to middle office operations, automating back office processes, which you said FirstBank is doing, processing, reconciliation, settlements. Not a very key point that you made. FirstBank may be 126 years old, but it acts like a startup. And you said that in order to be able to respond quickly to the market, because the market moves so fast and banks have to be at the forefront, which FirstBank is, to respond to the market, you need a technology platform to make that happen. You also said that data has to be mainstream, and you need a model that can essentially deliver that. So thank you very much for your excellent points, Mr. Callistus Obeta, Group Executive, Technology and Services, FirstBank of Nigeria. We appreciate your insight. CEO and the Chief Technology Officer, co-founder of Okra NG, Ms. Farah Jitubo, who is going to be talking to us about how Okra is leveraging AI and blockchain in Nigeria. Farah, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that great introduction, and also thank you for FirstBank for having me on this panel and all the great conversations that we've been having so far. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can. Everyone able to see my screen? Great. So like Rotis just mentioned, I'm going to just be talking a little further about some points that Chinedu made and the rest of the panelists today about how Okra is essentially unlocking the power of artificial intelligence in the work that we're doing. So to start, what I want to talk about what we at Okra call the 5th generation of FinTech. How did we get here and why we can't leapfrog it? So in order to understand what the 5th generation of FinTech is, because I just said, a new word, 5th generation of FinTech, let's just understand what that first 4 generations were. So when we look at the first 4 generations of FinTech, sorry about that. Okay. So when we look at the first 4 generations of FinTech, we look at the first generation being the banks. So looking at FirstBank, the first bank, a place where you could store your money, you can save your money. And at this time, you could do, you can do financial services inside your bank. We look at the second generation because in order to go into FinTech, you have to enable it. You have to build the infrastructure for this. So now you have interbanking. So now you can have several banks and you can do business across several banks. Then we go cashless. That's the third generation of FinTech. The ability to not have to hold large sums of money, and we can go to an ATM and we can draw that money at any time. And then we go into the 4th generation, payments, remittance, the ability to now get the goods and services we're looking for, moving into a value-based economy and being able to start buying goods and services with the apps that we're using. So now 5th generation. So if you look at, I think it was really great that Chinedu mentioned all the industrial revolutions, because that's really helpful for me and it sets a really great baseline. So when you look at the 5th generation of FinTech and you're embracing AI and data in FinTech, what does that mean? So for us, we say that financial innovation cannot exist without the right infrastructure. And we look at that as data. So that's something else that was said a lot today. Essentially, how far the African FinTech industry can grow is intrinsically tied to the success of such an infrastructure. So if you don't truly understand me, then there's a limit to how much you can help me. So by definition, you cannot participate in something you do not understand. And in the simplest, most basic form, I look at AI as a means of, let's say, extracting understanding from data. So I've been introduced. My name is Farah. Now you know my name. You know I'm a woman. You know certain things about me, but you don't truly know me. So if you don't know me, you can't offer me any value. You can't offer me services. But if, let's say, you could take my last 100, 200 transactions that I've done, you understand the kind of things I spend money on. You understand the kind of things that you can maybe you can refer me to use, and so on and so forth. So why can't we leapfrog this? To understand why we can't leapfrog it, let's just look at what is leapfrogging in general. So leapfrogging is the notion that areas which have poorly developed technology or economic basis can move themselves forward rapidly through the adoption of modern systems without going through intermediate steps. So if you look at AI and machine learning, by definition, the word learning means to learn. So you can't understand, you can't grow without beginning to learn that. So you have to adopt this system. So if you look at this individual farmer, if he can pick a lot of corn, he can feed his family, he can feed his extended family. Maybe he sells corn to a few of his neighbors. But like Chinedu mentioned with the first industrial revolution, when you're moving into the second revolution, you have to adopt these systems in order to grow and to scale. So now you can't leapfrog this, and you would have to go through that first industrial revolution, and you would have to be able to now go to mass production. Now, you not only are providing maize and corn for your family and your extended family, you can do this for your community, you can build commerce, you can now sell this at a greater scale. So if we continue here, now we have to we've looked at how we get into the 5th generation and how we want to use FinTech to understand data. So how do you beat the curve? Why should we embrace this innovation in AI in order to stay ahead? So this is a very simple chart. This is Everett Rogers' diffusion innovation model. So essentially what it shows you is at any stage of adoption of technology, how much market share you stand to have at the end of this process. And if you see when you're an innovator or an early adopter, at the end of this, you have a better chance of owning the market share, because even if you go through some friction with this product, so you see a little bit of a dip, even if you go through some friction, you have that graduated knowledge and that knowledge that you have in order to continue to beat the curve. And when you are early majority, a late majority, because you didn't go through that, because you didn't start learning and understanding that, you have a less ability to have that great amount of market share at the end of it. So the data advantage. So let's look at content as an example of the data advantage. I'm going to show Blockbuster and Netflix. There's two popular companies that a lot of us might know. So a very, in retrospect, ironic quote that came out of the Blockbuster boardroom was after they had market research done on why users want to use Blockbuster, they came back with this: people like coming to our stores. They like the experience of going to our stores because they like to be able to open and close and read the back of DVD cases. They enjoy the serendipity of the possibility of running into their neighbor. They really like picking up popcorn on the way out. So that's what they felt that the customer was. And I think that human intelligence, what Chinedu was talking about, is something really good to look at here. So that's what they were using. They were using human intelligence. They were not using data to actually solve this problem. So you can see that in this time when they were doing this and investing in this physical infrastructure, Netflix, meanwhile, was investing in both streaming technology and data collection. From investing in that innovation and that infrastructure, they were able to build a massive amount of data. And then they began leveraging AI very early to improve recommendations and create immediate value for their customers. And then they were able to now use this customer viewing preferences to provide continuous value by investing in content creation. So now they can see, is it that I like romance movies, or do I like Ramsey Noah? And because of that, they can actually start recommending things to you. So in irony, when you look back at the comment, no, people didn't like the serendipity of bumping into a neighbor. They just want to be at home in their underwear watching their favorite TV show, and you be able to tell them what they want to watch next. And that's simply what they were able to do. And if you even look at big tech today, even if you look at Apple and so on and so forth, the reason they grow and continue to grow to grab market share is because very early they understood the value of leveraging the data, to their customers' data, to build solutions that their customers wanted. So when you look at disruptive infrastructure, now we've talked about how we got here, why it's important to be innovative and continue to grow. How are we at Okra leveraging this AI and data to accelerate innovation? So we're building an infrastructure to enable end users to connect their bank accounts directly to third-party applications. And that's the power of a full picture. So this is a quote from Andreessen Horowitz: every company will be a FinTech company. And what does that mean? All companies need to have a payment infrastructure. They need to be able to take payments online. They need a data infrastructure to offer better services, because essentially the future of financial services is personalized. Now customers want you to be able to do something seamless, and they want you to know who they are in order to do that. So we're doing this in several sectors across several businesses, proving that yes, every company is a FinTech company, in the sense that in the insurance sector, we're providing solutions around know your customer, know your business, to be able to understand, is this person who they say they are? Understanding how do you create seamless payments by understanding what's in a person's bank account? You can a ride-hailing company now can see if you have the full amount for a trip before you're even booking that. And then fraud, we talked about fraud a lot. Everybody's talking about fraud. And when you're looking at transactions, you're able to now look at those patterns that we're all speaking about in order to be able to make informed decisions on lending, also informed decisions on health insurance and different things all throughout different spaces. And then even when it comes to the travel and the commerce space, we're helping them with internal reconciliation using AI-driven learning to understand patterns of payments coming in so they can reconcile and issue instant travel tickets and automate and speed up the processes within their business. And lastly, one of the things that we're doing the most AI behind is our income. So being able to understand not just the formal, but the informal sector. So what is the difference between somebody that might have, be a tailor, somebody that might work a 9 to 5, so on and so forth, in order for you to be able to serve a wide range of users regardless of how they derive their income. So now you can say that as a real estate company, I don't have to make you pay your rent for 1 year because of this information I've learned from you. And because I'm able to see these patterns, I can now allow you to pay your rent month on month. And those are the many ways and more that we at Okra are leveraging artificial intelligence for our customers. So thank you very much.
Great stuff there. Farah Jitubo, co-founder, CEO, and CTO, Chief Technology Officer at Okra, going through exactly how Okra is leveraging AI and or blockchain in Nigeria. Touched on a number of things. I especially like the Everett Rogers diffusion of innovation model, showing the different stages and how that impacts on market share. The example you just ended with on rent, that definitely is going to resonate with people in Nigeria, to where you can see payment transactions in history, and then a landlord can then say, okay, you don't have to pay rent for a full year, I can make you pay in a month. So great stuff. A very important point you also mentioned about you cannot participate in something you don't understand. Love the example using your name. Yeah, we know your name, still don't know you, 100%, but you've given us some information. So it's the buildup of that data, of getting more knowledge on customers and so on, that you can build on that. And excellent way to start the things with the 5th generation of embracing AI. You started with the 1st generation for banks, 2nd generation interbank systems, 3rd generation the cashless policy, 4th generation payments and remittance, and then 5th embracing AI and fintech. So great stuff, great presentation. Thank you so much for that. Excellent stuff from all our panelists. We thank you so much. We now want to hop into some questions here from there's a whole lot of questions that are here. Let me throw this out to Mr. Maina, since Aminu Maida, since unfortunately we're not able to get Mr. Musa Jimo. This is from Shehu Salami. It says, what is the CBN and NIBS doing to curb fraudulent use of Bitcoin? Now, of course, we know there's, we've been warned, regulators have warned us about this, but Mr. Maida, if you could please, Executive Director of Technology and Services at NIBS, if you could take a swipe at that question.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I would need to be very measured and careful in my response, because obviously when it comes to areas of fraud, number one, especially for things that are active and hot topics, you don't want to disclose too much of what you're doing, so that you don't jeopardize any potential successes you may have. What I would say is that it's an area that is being actively looked at, both from a regulatory perspective and also CBN also asking us for our opinions in terms of an industry infrastructure. But rest assured, we are here, us as NIBS, to ensure that the industry is secure in terms of where we sit at the center of being an interconnection hub. And I would also speak on behalf of the CBN that they are also here to ensure that the whole financial industry maintains the highest possible integrity. But I'll apologize again, I won't be able to go into too much detail, but rest assured it's something that is being looked at actively.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, sir. Another question is for Chinedu. Chinedu, again, a lot of folks enjoyed your presentation, but there's been follow-up questions with regards to the transparency side of things. The folks are asking for you to be a little more specific with how we can enhance transparency. I'm seeing multiple questions from people on the blockchain and AI side of things in fintech in Nigeria. Again, for our keynote speaker, Chinedu Echerio, if you can elaborate a little more on transparency. Your mic is muted, Chinedu.
Okay, sorry about that. So one of the advantages of a public blockchain actually is that everything is observable. Everyone can see all that's going on in a transaction. And for my personal view, if that the issue around corruption in Nigeria, corruption on all the levels of government, the use of and fraud within companies themselves, all those issues could be dealt swiftly and clearly with the adoption of blockchain. So on a very real way, in terms of really changing the narrative of Nigeria and just the uncertainty of doing business with Nigeria, with Nigerians, or even within Nigeria, I can't think of a more effective technology to collapse, again, what I think of the risk premium associated with those transactions. So one practical example is you can use blockchain, for example, to track exactly what happens to, let's say, international donor payments, right? To the level of clarity, know exactly who gave the money, where was it transferred, whose bank, and obviously I can understand that resistance to sharing that information, but I can think of a more robust platform to make sure there is widespread information about the inner workings of government, about the inner workings of certain parts of companies that have issues around fraud or internal controls. So I think observability and sharing information is, for me, one of the biggest advantages of blockchain and of these distributed ledger technologies.
Thank you so much for that. Again, our keynote speaker, Chinedu Echerio, thank you for that answer. Okay, Mr. Musa Jimoh is back with us, the Director of Payment System Management Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria, to speak with us on what regulatory framework will look like in the next 10 years and also payment system vision of 2020. You're welcome, Mr. Jimoh. Please take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Sorry, apologies for all the connection issues I was having here. Okay, I'm asked to discuss briefly what the future looks like in terms of our payment system vision. First, let me correct that our payment system vision will not extend till 2030, a 10-year vision. We're not doing that because the rapidity of changes in technology is so high that we can't wait 10 years before we begin to review our strategies again. So what we're proposing is to have a 5-year strategy, which we will then call 2025, PSV 2025. So once we get the approval for these, we'll actually be looking at new initiatives within the next 5 years. And let me quickly just run through some of the initiatives that we have put on table and what we are trying to implement to deepen acceptance of payment system and open the market for innovators and small businesses to enter the terrain. The first one is the regulatory sandbox. It's already in the public. We've shared the draft framework to the public for them to comment and then get back to us. We've gotten a lot of feedback and happy enough to announce that we are working with the Financial Conduct Authority of the UK in developing this regulatory sandbox. They've been there, they've done it, so they know it very well. Eventually, we'll customize it to our environment and ensure that it fits into our own ecosystem. The second one is the open banking regime, which we have also started working on in order to allow the entire ecosystem to work symbiotically. We want a situation where there will be no exclusivity on account data, being held by banks again. Banks should be able to open up their accounts, database and let fintech companies and other small companies be able to provide value-added services upon that account information that they hold. So we need a regulation that basically makes the market conduct very resilient and then more responsible. That's why we are coming out with the open banking regulation that would enable the banks to share their data with fintech technology companies so that they can provide financial services to the consumers who largely now have choices in terms of where they want their financial services being provided from. We've also done a couple of other initiatives on contactless. I think COVID-19 basically has exposed a lot of some of the weaknesses in our payment infrastructure. Everybody is used to using card and POS terminals where you need to make contact. You have to hold a card and start into a POS terminal and then punch your PIN. Now we are looking at, I think what COVID-19 basically has exposed us to is that we should be able to make payments without physical, contact with acquiring devices. And so contactless payment becomes more relevant in this regime. And coincidentally, we've also, released the QR code framework. People are responding, fintechs are responding in terms of how we can make this thing work for everyone. So people will be making payments without necessarily have to have the physical contact with the payment device. That framework is also in the public domain, and we are expecting feedback from the public. I think the ED of News actually discussed about the innovation sandbox or the API sandbox that they had there, basically to also their product and services within that environment to be more successful and be sure that it works before they go commercial. So those are some of the things that central banks will be aggregating together in a compendium called Payment System Vision 2020. There are other initiatives that are coming up, but we need to quickly focus on these ones because we know they'll basically drive the ecosystem into the future. The other one that I also want to share it quickly, if I have that time, has to be with artificial intelligence and big data. We have islands of data within the industry, and what CBN is trying to do now is to see how we can harmonize this data and provide a database where people can come and slice and dice and get, be able to trend and understand what the future of payment holds in terms of the activities that have happened within the payment infrastructure. So with all that being together, we would like to create an environment where small companies that don't have the financial muscle to come and take license from central bank can also participate. I think one of the major hurdles that the small companies, the fintech, are facing is their financial capability to come to CBN and say, I want to come and take a license. I'm not sure all those small companies will have, say, for example, 1 million naira to come and take a license. Whereas they have innovative ideas, they have very good ideas that can actually propel our financial system. So what we have done now is to tier our licenses, basically to collapse all the various licensing into 4 categories. So we'll be coming with a new licensing model that will enable the small companies to be able to come into the foreign without necessarily having to have or go through those stringent conditions that the regulator will impose on the big companies. So these are the things that we are looking at to implement and make working in the next 5 years. Thank you very much.
We're glad that you're able to join us. So big thanks to Mr. Musa Ajimo, Director of Payment System Management Department at the Central Bank. Also wanted to, the corrector said, saying that, okay, the PSV vision doesn't extend into 2030 because of the fast moving pace of technology. So PSV is actually up until 2025, after which the Central Bank can evaluate things. Talked about the regulatory sandbox, talking to SMEs, talking to businesses in the innovation landscape, listening to them. Very glad to hear the CBN is listening to them. Open banking regime, and also the contactless payments. We already had questions about that. Multiple questions for you, sir, Mr. Jimo, about the fact that we're in COVID-19 and reducing contact as opposed to POS and so on. So you've addressed that for those for many questions that we got in the Q&A box. Mr. Jimo has addressed. The CBN is looking at that, and also the QR code framework. And most importantly, sir, thank you for what you said about collapsing the licenses for SMEs. SMEs are the engine of our economy. So it was fantastic to hear that the CBN is collapsing licenses and making it easier for SMEs to approach you without reducing hurdles. So thank you very much. Now, so you've answered a number of our questions, and I believe we're running over time. So we want to, of course, get thank you again to our panelists. We want to get our closing remarks from Mr. Francis Shobo, Deputy Managing Director at FirstBank Nigeria Limited. Sir, we want to hear from you with your closing remarks. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. On behalf of all of us at FirstBank, I wish to express my appreciation to everyone present for being a part of the FirstBank FinTech Summit 4.0, despite these unprecedented times. Both the resource persons and delegates have been exceptional in sharing well-articulated ideas. Your contributions have validated our interest in highlighting the connections between blockchain and artificial intelligence and the opportunities for the future of FinTech in Nigeria. The future will be disruptive, but disruptions fuel FinTech. We are therefore in a good place. We trust that today's discourse has been worth your while, and you have received insight for advancing these vital aspects of economic and national development. Undoubtedly, FinTech has generated positive disruptions in banking and other financial services, and financial institutions will do well to persist in taking advantage of the emerging trends. FirstBank has been able to achieve the laudable milestones highlighted today for its customers and partners only because we threw our hearts into the FinTech ring by embracing the disruptions. We will continue to embrace emergent FinTech opportunities. We will persist in adopting the best technology and collaborating with the best partners to deliver value to our customers. I urge you to leverage your quantifiable insights shared by the distinguished speakers. Do exploit in your respective organizations and for the utmost good of FinTech consumers globally. Once again, thank you very much for a successful FirstBank FinTech Summit 4.0. Please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Francis Shobo, Deputy Managing Director of FirstBank Nigeria, for your closing remarks. And also our thanks, of course, to the Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Adeshola Adetutan, of course, for his opening remarks as well. And a big thank you to every single one of our panelists, our keynote speaker, Mr. Chinedu Echerio, serial successful entrepreneur, co-founder of Love and Magic Company, for coming and talking to us and giving us a very insightful presentation there on how blockchain and artificial intelligence will disrupt FinTech in Nigeria. Also, our thanks to Mr. Chuma Ezirim, Group Executive, E-Business and Retail Products, FirstBank of Nigeria, for talking to us about how current trends in AI are impacting digital products and development over at FirstBank. Mr. Aminu Maida, Executive Director, Technology and Services at the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System PLC. Thank you so much for talking to us about the industry infrastructure to support new developments in the financial service industry. Our thanks to Mr. Kalistos Obeta, Group Executive Technology and Services, FirstBank Nigeria, for talking to us about the technology implications of AI and blockchain to banking services and the impact on technology and customer service. Thanks, of course, to Mr. Musa Jimo, Director, Payment System Management Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria on PSB 2025, and also what the regulatory framework will look like in the future. And of course, Ms. Farah Jitubo, how Okra, the CEO, co-founder, CEO, and CTO at Okra, talking to us about how Okra is leveraging AI and blockchain in Nigeria. Our thanks to everybody that participated in this, and thank you for all your questions. They're still coming in. We couldn't get to them, but we will reply your questions via email. Once again, my name is Arutu Rodiri. Go by Rotus. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a privilege to be part of the FinTech Summit 4.0, brought to you by FirstBank, leader in the financial services space and technology space. Thank you so much, everybody. And you guys stay safe, wash your hands, wear your masks, practice social distancing. FirstBank wants to remind you all to do that. Thank you all so much, and you all have a pleasant day.
This is Sam. Sam lives in a fast-paced city and has to go through hours of traffic to work and back every day. At the end of the month, when he has to pay his utility bills and taxes, Sam always dreads the stress of going after each biller to make payment. That was then. Sam is a much happier man now because he uses the FirstBank FirstBank biller aggregation platform. He simply logs on to www.firstbillspay.com and enjoys a single easy-to-use payment point for all his utility bills, taxes, funds transfer within FirstBank or to other banks. The biller aggregation platform allows you purchase airtime and data pay school fees, cable TV subscription, and much more. To experience unique banking services and payment solutions like SAM, simply log on to www.firstbillspay.com. You will be prompted to create your own account, and once you complete registration formalities, you are on your way to enjoy an innovative, stress-free, and seamless payment solution known as First Bills Pay. Let's make life much easier for you. Log on to www.firstbillspay.com to get direct access to billers, vendors, and service providers. The biller aggregation platform is designed for you. Sign up today and experience more than you're begging for. You first. FirstBank.